Hi, I'm Alex Roman, Executive Editor for Metro Magazine, and welcome back to Bus Tech Talk. Today, me and my co-host, Mark Hollenbeck, Business Development Manager for Complete Coachworks, are joined by Cecil Blandon, Director of Maintenance at Oakland, California's AC Transit. Our conversation with Cecil went so well that we've cut it up into two parts. In part one, we discussed Cecil's journey from the U.S. Marines to public transit, as well as mentorship. While in part two, we take an in-depth look at AC Transit's world-class maintenance program, technology usage, and much more. This is a great conversation. Thanks again for joining us, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. You had mentioned all of the different propulsion types you're working with, and I know that's part of the great work that AC Transit's doing is measuring all of those propulsion types and seeing which ones work best for them in certain applications. But I also know that you work with a lot of different buses. I mean, from transit buses to motor coaches. What are some of the challenges that you see in working with so many different propulsion types and OEMs and their buses? What kind of challenges are you seeing in the maintenance in the garages and on the roads that you guys are addressing?
So definitely, it was very interesting when I came to work for AC Transit. We have approximately about 25 different bus builds across those 625 buses. So I have 30 footers, 40 footers, 42 footers, 45 footers, 60 footers. I have double decker buses, right? So I have, just from some of the brands, MCIs, New Flyers, Gilligs. I have some E450s. I also have some Van Hools. So in all kind of ranging between those fleet technology types. We have the diesels and we also have diesel hybrids too. So, we do have everything except for the natural gas, the CNG, or LNG technology. But familiar with those. That's where I came from. But in all the bus builds, I think, one of the items, and they're split between different garages, right? Some garages have a technology that is not at other garages. And that's really where the challenge comes into play is how do I get or spread the knowledge across all the mechanics when they might not see the bus? That's one of the challenges. So when it comes to zero emission technology, what we focus on and my strategy is a 1 to 4. So one mechanic to every 4 buses. As we bring in new buses on board, that's how many mechanics I need to have prepared for zero emission technology, right? And so where that bus is going to be deployed at, that's where I'm focusing to ensure I get folks trained up. And as we know, it usually takes about 2 years to get a bus in from start of procurement to actually delivery. So it gives us plenty of time to program things in correctly and to be successful, right? And that's where that's important. When it comes to the rest of the fleet and technology, the mixed buses that's out there, the challenge that comes to play is just as we are, as a public agency, we're experiencing shortages in technicians. That's no different for the OEMs, right? The field support that's there. So it's not a jab at them. There's a lack of still that skill set also for them. And so when we're looking at warranty repairs or just the length of time some of the repairs may take, zero emission technology buses are taking a little bit longer because it's still new and there's still a lot of staff that have to work from the ground up. I mean, if you grab a new mechanic and you teach him zero emission technology, he's not going to be very effective for 6 to 9 months. Right. And so if you're an agency and you have new bus deployments and they happen to be new technology, it's going to be a little rough up front, and I think it's important that we understand it as public transit agencies and you work with your OEM is the key to success. We've done a lot of pilot programs from early adopters, from zero emission from 2003. I mean, it's been almost 2 decades. We started working on zero emission technology. There was lots of headaches that took place. But one thing is we never gave up, right? We worked with the OEM. We had our differences. We worked with them to figure out the best path forward. But it was clear to us we wanted to work together, figure out how we can make the technology better, and continue to deploy this. We could have easily given up many years ago and say, you know what, this thing sucks. Let's just park them and move on, right? And we could have done that, but we didn't quit. Staff was dedicated. They also were invested to see the program work. They wanted it to be successful. So they also tried and looked at ways on how we can, when we ran into a roadblock, they tried to figure out, okay, this doesn't work. Okay, what can we do, right? And so that is what allowed us to be successful with our trainings. And so that same mentality and that same concept is what we use with our training programs. We use a lot of hands-on training, kind of OJT, but hands-on training for a mechanic in our zero emission program, for employees to retain the knowledge and be able to make sure that information is really in their brain, and they know how to perform the maintenance that's required with the vehicles. But the OEMs, having a lot of different vehicles, the more vehicles you have of the different brands, the more complicated things become, and the bigger the challenge is when you have multiple brands of systems. So like your HVAC, right, might be, there's multiple brands out there. If I have all three different brands across my fleet, things become a lot more complicated. So agencies tend to stick with one or two main systems, like might be the transmission vendor. You might just have Allison or Boyd. Your HVAC, some prefer one or the other. We look at that strategically, and also, what I communicate as far as for our parts, that also helps us in cost savings, knowledge gaps that we don't have to continually keep retraining when there are too many different products that are out there. So it's important that we do have some consistency in our brands and our systems to ensure that the knowledge and the training that we do stays there longer. Otherwise, we have to bring those mechanics in a lot faster or a lot sooner and continue to do more training on all these different systems.
Oh, that's good, Cecil. It sounds like you guys never have a dull moment, right? With all the different technology, I mean, you keep people interested and on their toes, which is probably a good thing at the end of the day. You talked about the augmented reality a little bit earlier. Talk a little bit more about that and what other technology or other tools that your maintenance team is going to be using, you think, in the coming years that are going to be the most beneficial?
So being here, right, and I'm located over in Oakland in Northern California in the Bay Area, and we have Silicon Valley just south of us. So you can imagine there's so many new gadgets, coming up, startups of testing and things like that. So, which is great because kind of gives us a sneak peek towards what the future, and that's kind of really what that augmented reality. I mean, truly, agencies that have not seen how augmented reality overlays can be done don't know what they're actually missing. And I say that because as a mechanic, and you're grabbing the book, and I'm just going to use one of the scenarios that I think just lays out really where the future is going to go with some of this stuff, and even a little bit of AI, but augmented reality, the normal traditional work on a mechanic. He's got a electrical problem on a 60-foot bus. You have wiring all over the place. You have connection points all over that vehicle, and you're trying to diagnose. And you look in the schematics, and it tells you it's it's CE 2204. So you're like, okay, where is this connection, this junction block located? And so typically you start opening up panels, removing, wrapping on a vehicle until you kind of find that junction block of where it's at. But just imagine if you could just grab your phone or an iPad, select your vehicle that you're working on, and hit wiring schematics, and then point that iPad to the bus, any area of the bus, and it will show you where the wiring is, just giving you like an X-ray vision of where the wiring is on the bus. And you can now distinguish where the junction blocks are at. And you don't have to go and open up 20 panels. You can just point that iPad, walk down the bus, and see where that connection point that you're looking for, and know exactly where you need to go and open up to get to that connection that you need to work on. So that's how augmented reality works. It's going to provide that type of level scenarios for us of wiring schematic, coolant lines. You might have multiple lines of coolant, hydraulic, especially on a 60-foot bus that run through the vehicle, and really apply that technology in the palm of your hand and make the diagnosis or the repair time of a mechanic much faster. Now, AI, as you guys know, has really started to, come out of the woodwork. I'm gonna call it that way, and new things. You see all this memes and things people are creating, right, of all kinds of videos and stuff like that. But how is AI really going to be used in the future? Let's say for the maintenance, and I'll talk on what I would say for me on when I look at as a fleet manager trend analysis, right? And so in the essence right now, I'm having to be that AI, right? I have to look at multiple spreadsheets, look at different reports that I run, and then make some analysis on it based on what I'm seeing, also based on experience, right? And that's really the key items, right? Successful fleet managers, one, rely on their experience to be able to look for patterns and look at where things are not looking correctly, right? I can look at data sets and be like, that looks off. While someone else is just going to look at data sets like, hey, I see a bunch of numbers and I don't see anything wrong, right? But the experience of where numbers should be at are filtered through my head really quickly. So the AI will provide that kind of enhancement, right? Where your maintenance system can have an AI applied to it. And the mechanic can say, I want to, bus 1625. I need to know what are the last 10 road calls, right? So normally I would run a spreadsheet, pull the data off, but now I can just tell the prompts to the AI and have it pull all the information and tell me what are the last work orders it may have had of anything or whatever prompt I tell it, and have it look in my maintenance system to do that. So that's where AI will be applied in maintenance to the future. And you hear a lot of predictive analytics, which is a similar setup, right? But that relies more on algorithms and things like that. While an AI, you could just prompt it and tell it what you need to do, certain things. You could tell it to, look at your last, a full fleet and look at an analysis. And the AI is going to give you a historical aspect and condense, and it can look at a large data set that I might miss, trying to go through it or something like that. And this will filter it out and give me a snapshot that I still will need to go back and make an informed decision. So it's important to understand the AI type technology is not going to eliminate necessarily a body, but it will cut down the time and give you more of a filter view of maybe what you're asking for it or what you're trying to analyze on a fleet or a vehicle history that you might have, a 5-year history on multiple fleets that you're trying to decipher what might be happening between a certain fleet that you might be experiencing problems. So there's a lot of good things I think that are going to come from the AI once AI gets really implemented into maintenance systems. That we'll be looking forward to. I think that's going to be one of the key aspects of, I think, some time savings for mechanics in the future.
Great, Cecil. We appreciate the conversation. I think we've touched on a lot. I mean, we touched on apprenticeship, mentorship, propulsions and all of the vehicles, training itself, and all of these sorts of things. And, transit's a really collaborative industry. I think a lot of agencies, I know one of the benefits of Metro all the time that I hear and that I like to talk about, to be honest with you, is somebody reads something, somebody hears something on Metro, they go to that transit agency, they start asking questions. With so many things of AC Transit being at the forefront of the industry, from a maintenance perspective, you could talk a little bit about the importance of collaboration and being able to help agencies as they approach you, try to set up similar programs, or some of the things that you guys, when you reach out to other agencies for help or for their guidance and something they may be doing that you guys want to implement.
Yeah, I mean, one of the helpful items there is that, the Gillick factory is actually, I'd say kind of in our backyard. They're about a half an hour away from my actual site here. So there's a lot of transit agencies as they come in to pick up buses or inspect buses that will reach out to me and let me know that they want to come and check out my facilities, or give them a what we'll call a zero emission tour. Check out all our zero emission stuff and what we do, our tools and things like that. So typically I do about 30 tours a year for other transit agent. It could be a transit agency. Folks looking to go into hydrogen or zero emission technology within the U.S., out of the U.S., Australia. I mean, I've had, different different folks international come through to kind of see what we're doing and why. Sort of a little bit of a best practice to your point on there, and why we're doing things. What as an agency. We take a lot of pride to share our knowledge with others, right? We are a large agency, so we understand that large agencies have a little bit more flexibility than a smaller agency, right? I can make a mistake and I can still, let's say, make service. A smaller agency makes a mistake, that might be 10% of their fleet, right? And have a much severe problem that they can't overcome. They also don't have the same amount or quantity of staff to handle certain situations like we do. We have a lot more staff, sometimes dedicated employees to look at problems that they might not have. In smaller agencies, you wear a lot of hats. I've been there. I understand the scenario. So I like working with other transit agencies and helping them out where I can, and sharing my knowledge and why we do things here a certain way. And help them understand that. So we're always open to collaborate, and we do all the time. I usually speak at least to once a week to an agency outside the district, on whether it's maintenance or zero emission or workforce development, why we do things like that. So I think it's very important to the industry that agencies collaborate, help each other out, because it helps us, one, with our tax dollars. I mean, it's public money, so we want to make sure we do things right the first time, right? And some of us that have deployed zero emission technology or any technology pathway or any other systems, if you have more experience with something, reach out. We are a big zero emission agency, but I have reached out to other agencies for things that I don't normally, it's not my normal forte, and reached out to talk to that agency and say, hey, I'm looking to purchase this. I'm going to get 10 of these vehicles. I see you have 100 of them. Can you tell me, what you like, what you don't like? What are some things, and so I picked their brain, but you got to reach out.
That's great, Cecil. It's like you said at the very beginning of the conversation, you kind of fell into transit, but and I think your story is pretty similar to a lot of other folks in the industry, right? Where they fell into transit, but they're never going to get out.
It's the dark hole, right? You're trying to climb out. For me, I enjoy, like I said, it's dynamic, right? Something different. There's never a dull moment. I plan my day and it never ends up that way. So it keeps me on my toes. But it definitely helps is I have a great team. The team here at AC Transit, from the maintenance staff, my corporate team, they're all in line, and I should say with the vision of where we're going. And so I think we are all in sync with the same passion, and dedication and motivation to get to where we're going. Right. And so that helps a lot. I mean, if you're not happy at work, it's tough to stay there. I guess I'm going to say that when it comes to that. And, the team here makes life easier. And when those hard moments arrive, or COVID timeframes, I'm going to use that scenario, right? We all went through the COVID timeframes and tough scenarios, and folks needed to be remote, still trust that everything gets done and things needed to be completed. We didn't skip a beat. And I think for the most part, for us, maintenance, my staff was all on site. We had to be here. We had to do the things. There was no whining and crying. We knew we needed to adjust. We did it on the fly. And we made what I'll consider as family changes, personal changes, And that showed in the dedication to the workforce because we didn't skip a beat. Folks were here every day to continue to fix buses because we knew that's what we were here to do. And I didn't have to go and push people to do that. People did that by themselves. And I say voluntarily too. Okay, got to make this adjustment, got to do this, got to talk to the wife, got to figure out daycare or whatever scenarios, right? All those kind of things. And to this day, the team is very successful. The team, is very, I'm not going to say automated or autonomous center, but almost could say, runs itself. I can be gone, go to a conference, go take care of things that need to be done, or take time off. I'd like to say that if a head of maintenance or a leader can't be gone a week or 2 weeks, right, from the system, and the system has failures, that's a problem. I'm glad. I tell my guys, hey, you need to take time off. You need to make sure your team is squared away so that it can run itself, right? And you need to be able to take that week, decompress, go on vacation. Don't take a week and work in your house. Go take a week and go on vacation, right? And I push that because it's important. I'm going to say I do it myself because, right, you're grinding. You have to decompress. So, I think some people will be like, oh, well, how can you take 2 weeks off? Mark, I'll tell you, man, when I had my child, so I have 3 kids, 3 boys, and our first one, was born in 2009. And so from when that child was born, with my wife, we've never taken time, vacation to ourselves. It's always been, you're dragging the kids along. That's just the way my wife is. We bring the kids everywhere we go. She doesn't like to hand them off anywhere. But we were able to take pretty much 3 weeks off. So to tell you that I took 3 weeks off from work and went on vacation just with the wife and I, and to decompress, to be able to do that and to come back where I can just pick up and continue, and that I was not missed, I'm going to say is a testament to my team, to also just the leadership and the things that we have here, because I've seen leaders as I was growing up where they could never leave because if they left, they said everything fell apart, right? And you have to be able to do that. The team has to be able to function with you there or not. And I think that's success to the leadership, to the organization, to the things as a leader and how you have things established with your team. And you have to be able to take that time off. So I'm happy to report, I'm going to say that I'm able to do that. And it sounds selfish, I guess, maybe in a way or whatever to do that. But that's how, as you mentioned, Mark, the team here at AC Transit works. We work hand in hand. We collaborate. We work together. We understand our mission. We understand our process. And, and I appreciate that I have that opportunity, that my team allows me to do that I have that flexibility, on it, because it would not be possible without having a great team like the one I have here.
Thanks for being so generous with your time and shining a light on yourself and on AC Transit as well.